Today the devil showed up in the first reading and then also in the gospel. What was the devil trying to do? We got to ask that question, because if he was there, he's now here. What is he trying to do? What was he trying to do to Jesus? What was he trying to do to Adam and Eve, in the story? That's an important question, because he's doing the same thing to you. You're no different. So let's look at what he's trying to do. In the story of Genesis, what happened very simply was the devil said, listen, you could do it yourself. You don't really need God. And the reason why God's holding this out is because he doesn't want you to become like him. You could do it yourself. So that's one of the temptations you and I always face. I don't need to actively go deeper into the mystery of God's love in my life, because I could pull the human story off myself. I could do it. We're like the Nike commercial. The devil says, just do it. You could do it. What's the matter with you? And he does it in all kinds of subtle ways, In other words, you can handle life no matter what life throws at you with your own power and your own ability. That's what he's saying. Then the devil comes back to Jesus, and he said pretty much the same thing, but he added a piece to it. He wanted to distract him from what he was called to do by getting him caught up in making it himself. You could do it now. Listen, I'll give you the power to do it. You could do it all by yourself, And when you're doing everything by yourself and coping with life, you're not going to be able to fulfill your destiny and purpose. So Jesus said, listen, I got a job to do. I got no time for this. Come on. That's basically what he's saying to him. So what is the job? The job is the same job you got. No difference. And so you're going to be distracted. You're going to feel, do I really need God's love? Do I really need that God's love to make a difference in my life and fulfill my mission? It's a question you wrestle with every week. So here's the question I ask today. Is the Eucharist the most important event of your week? The most important event of your week. You think about it during the week, you prepare for it, you enter into it, or is it sort of something you sort of do? You fill it in. It's meant to be the most important part of your week. And if you go daily, it's the most important part of your day. Nothing takes precedence over it. Nothing. It's the most important part of your day. Because this is the experience where you let yourself be loved by your God, by entering deeply into the sacred mystery celebrated with one another. So we got to look at that, how we enter into this experience. Because you could come here out of, I'm going to come here because I want to appease the gods to make sure nothing happens to me. I want to make sure I can control what I'm going to do. I mean, you're still in charge, So if you come here full of yourself, you're going to miss the experience. So the question you'll always be asking is, how do I empty myself so I can allow him to fill me? So how do I practice in preparing for this important, the most important time of my week? Because this is God's time. This is God's space. And so it's not your time and your space. He's working on you right now. He's working on you. He wants to get you ready for what you need to do this week in his name and power. And so let's look at it. I'm going to be writing this all the way through for 90 days, looking at different parts of the Eucharist. So I want to look today first at how do I prepare for Eucharist? How do I prepare for this most important day of my week? What do I do so that I could be free when I come in this sacred place and time, this time for God? How can I enter into it in a way that opens my heart to the mystery that's seeking to want to unfold in front of me? See, if I come here full of myself, you're missing it. If it's all about you, you're missing it. Hate to say it to you. So how do I prepare myself to make sure it doesn't become all about me? So let's look at least a piece of it. How do I prepare? The most important thing you can do to prepare for this sacred encounter with the living God is to try to be in a loving stance throughout the week. That means you're emptying yourself. And try not to get caught up in yourself, but to be in a loving stance. Now, there's some days you're going to miss it completely. That's what sin is, not loving. You know, you're going to basically say, Lord, I guess I've been self-wrapped today. I'm a little self-absorbed. Life is all about me today. I'm taking everything personal, everything, I'm just in that little edge today. That means you're getting full of yourself. And so the most important thing is, how do I try to be in a loving stance? Why is that important? When you love, you empty yourself. You empty yourself so he can fill you. But what do? We fill ourselves with ourselves again. So the most important thing to prepare it is, if I'm just in a self-absorbed, all about me week, you come here, you're so full of yourself, he can't possibly fill you because you're not empty. And then you're here looking at your clock. You want to make sure you get out on time. You go here, there. It's all about you thinking about what you're going to do after. You wonder why did UConn get so beat today by Louisville? You know, you're all talking to yourself. And if you're talking to yourself during the experience, you're not present to it. And if you're leaning into the past and the future, you're definitely not present to it. And so you're missing the most important experience of your week. That is releasing within you the fact that you are completely loved by your God. Completely, as you are, completely loved. So that means you can give up begging at people's table for crumbs of love, or refusing even to beg because you know you're not going to even get the crumbs. You're finally free to stand in life in a posture of love. So preparing is being in a loving stance. And then the Word. Read it. So when you hear it proclaimed, it's already been speaking to you. It's already perking in place. So you should always read the readings during the week for Sunday. Maybe once, twice, 3 times. You let it speak to you. So when all of a sudden you hear it, it's a familiar word. A lot of times you miss it because you haven't read it during the week. You're trying to grasp the whole thing in one big swoop. But if you know the Word, because you meditated on the Word and you prayed on the Word, when you're hearing it, it will echo. It will touch deeply inside you. So those are 2 things. Trying to be in a loving stance. Now, you might have a bad Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe even Thursday. Well, at least try it Friday and Saturday. Now, if you're having a bad Friday and a bad Saturday morning, at least try it afternoon on Saturday. Remember we used to fast? 1 hour. Try loving 1 hour before you come. Try loving. Go out of your way trying to love somebody to get ready for this moment. Empty yourself. Empty yourself out. Okay? Then, dress appropriately. This is not a basketball game. This is not a sport event. Dress appropriately. I learned that lesson very clearly when I was a young boy with my parents, what they expected. But one day I was in South Africa when it was the apartheid was still working and the townships were there. I had the privilege to go into a couple of townships, celebrate Eucharist, and guess what happened on Sunday? And that was dirt poverty in those townships, dirt poverty. There was no roads, everything was dirt, and it was dirt poverty. Everyone came to the Eucharist with their Sunday best. Because it was important. When I am sabbatical or I'm on vacation, I always wear a nice pair of slacks, a nice shirt. So dress appropriately because it's basically telling you by your dress that this is important. This is important. It's not just, well, we're going to sort of hang out and just get in and get out. So again, I just encourage you to look at that. This is not meant to be a fashion show. We got to look really, whatever it is. It means that it's saying to me, this is an important event. There's a casualness in our country now that people have a hard time, especially the young people, establishing the difference between to dress appropriately. Then kids wonder why sometimes they don't get the interview. They didn't understand. You don't go with sweatpants into the interview. So I just want to encourage that. And then also, try to come early. Try to come early. Why? Because you need to do a couple of things even before we begin. And these things you need to do is first, when you walk through the door, dip your fingers or your hand in the holy water. That reminds you that you have been baptized. Everyone is born with God. Everyone is born with God. But somehow, some way, because God has chosen you from all time to be his living and loving presence in this time, your parents, or maybe yourself as an adult, were brought to the waters of baptism, the most powerful experience in your life. Because what happened in your baptism? You were plunged deeply into that mystery of God who dwells within you. In other words, you entered what will take place on the day of your death when you embrace God completely. You experience his unconditional, passionate love for you in your baptism. You experienced it, and you experienced the oneness with God. You are completely one with God. You're completely one with one another, and you're completely one with all that is. You experienced that profoundly. You were plunged into it, and because you experienced it, as soon as you came up out of the water, the church, the people of God, anointed you, set you aside for God's purpose. You were now the anointed one, the Christos, the Christ, or the Messiah, the one sent by God. That's your destiny and that's your purpose. And then what did it put on the baptismal garment, which said, know Christ, for you, that's who you are. The more you become fascinated with Jesus Christ, the more you know him, not just about him, the more you experience him, the more you'll be faithful to your destiny, because Jesus Christ is the enfleshment of God's love. And then as an adult or as a child, your parent or yourself was handed a candle, lit from the Paschal candle, the Easter candle, that breaks into the darkness on Holy Saturday, so that we could now live in a freedom. It's given to you. That's your destiny. To be a light to those caught in darkness, the web of their own self. To be a light, a way out for those who are self-absorbed. those who are afraid to live, those who are caught in drugs and alcohol because they're so fearful inside or their wound is so infected. You're called to be that, the dipping in the water, to remind me that I got a gift. I've experienced this gift, and I'm constantly trying to open my heart for that gift again and again and again. Because why? I also received the mission. Your purpose is not to be distracted by the things of the world. You're not of the world, Jesus said. You're in it, but you're not of it. You're of me. And your destiny and your purpose, your legacy, has nothing to do with how successful or how popular or how whatever you are in the world. Your legacy is no matter what life threw at me, I witnessed love and I witnessed the power of that love to those who needed to see it, to hear it, and I called forth that love within them. So you put your finger in the water and you bless yourself with the sign of the cross, which means it's going to cost me. I'm going to suffer greatly for the Lord. It's going to cost me. This is not a free lunch. This is not some cute little thing you go to because it's nice to go to. This is not something I do for my kids. It's amazing how many kids over the year, how many parents go to Eucharist in order to give it to their kids so they get a break with the tuition in the school, but once they're out of school, they don't go anymore. And they destroy their children's faith because they're saying to their kid, it's really not important. It doesn't work for me. I don't know why it should work for you. Crazy, nuts. You've been baptized. You didn't choose God. He chose you from all time. Go put that baptism. And I don't want to pay the cost of being in a loving stance all the time. I don't want to love my enemies, do good to those who hate me, and bless you. We got to wrestle with that. It's going to cost you. This is not a free lunch, as I said. So I come in here because I need to experience his love. I need to learn more about what does it mean to be loved by my God. I need to hear his word so he could tell me what I'm called to do versus that I basically domesticate the gospel, make it nice, and Jesus would basically throw you up out of his mouth and say, you got to be kidding me. Some of the stuff you believe and you hold. You haven't read the scriptures. You haven't read my gospels. You're more American than you are Christian. That's what that... Okay? So I come early. Gift and mission. Then I come in here and I greet one another. Hospitality. Because we're in this together. We're not lone rangers. The Christian faith is not about me just coming here and saying, oh, I need you. You need me. We need one another to remind us, to work with us, to help us. Because sometimes here, I need you to reveal to me the very face of God. Because I forgot it. I forgot what that looks like. So I need you. We need one another in this. Because this is not easy. It's not easy. So we come here, we begin to connect with one another. The really sense of hospitality. You don't come here to say, okay, I'm going to spend my time in prayer and everyone quiet, no one talk to each other. The most important stance of emptying is not your prayer. The most important stance of emptying is you loving. So you come in here with a loving stance, looking to greet, looking to see. And every person here has a story. Every person has a story. Have we taken time to listen to it and try to respond to it? Again, this is just the first part we're looking at. How do I prepare for the sacred encounter with love itself so I could be faithful to my destiny and purpose? I could be faithful to what I experienced in the waters of baptism. How do I get ready for that? We'll be talking more about this. This is just coming through the door. This is about greeting. That's all it is so far. The first step. So how well do you take the first step? How well do you take it? If you run in and run out, you'll never be faithful to your destiny and your mission. You'll never experience the gift that you've been given. It'll be just a faint echo inside you, a deep longing inside you, and you'll be looking for it in everything else but the Lord. If I get this or have this or whatever it is, you know. All your longings, my dear brothers and sisters, all the things you want, everything is a longing for what you experienced in your baptism. Because all those longings, have they really satisfied? Have they really satisfied? Yeah. A couple moments. Then you want more longings. So everything, we've been wounded by our God. He needed to wound us by bringing us into that intimate experience, what will take place when death touches us, before we die. So you know what's going to happen beyond the grave. You know. You've already experienced it. The question is, have you re-entered that mystery? Have you re-entered that mystery? So I ask you to take a few moments now and just sit quietly and just think about today. How did I prepare to enter this sacred time in this sacred space, which is God's time in God's space, so that I can learn more about my destiny, my purpose, my mission, and experience more profoundly his love for me, so I can let it spill over into others. And the first movement of that love is with one another. If you don't love here, you're not going to love out there.